Okay, everyone, welcome to this morning's Bambuddha Boost. We've got Tom Dawkins here today, who's the co-founder and CEO of startsomegood.com, a global crowdfunding platform and education provider for social good projects. He previously founded Australian youth non-profit Vibewire, worked for Ashoka in Washington, DC, and for HopeLab in Silicon Valley, and was founding director of the Changemakers Festival with the Australian Centre for Social Innovation in 2013. Tom has consulted with numerous non-for-profits, associations, governments on how to better engage their communities using social technologies and spoken at conferences, including SXSW, SOCAP, Purpose, the World Summit, and the Information Society and Nexus Summit, as well as the Game Changers Gathering last year. So if anybody did come along to the Game Changers Gathering, you were probably quite delighted with Tom's presentation and his beautiful brain that he continues to share with the world along with his insights. So I'm going to do what I do best today, and I'm going to disappear, and I'm going to hand you over to the lovely Tom Dawkins.
Thank you so much for that generous introduction, Anna. Great to be here on a Bambuddha Boost session with all of you. Thank you for coming along and spending a little bit of time with me this morning. One of my great challenges in life is trying to be more pithy. I have a lot that I always want to say, and so I am going to try and be brief this morning. It's only a short session, and I want to leave you with a few key practical takeaways based on my experience working with thousands of social entrepreneurs, helping them design, launch, and grow social impact projects. Before I go any further, I just want to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from the traditional land of the Camaragal people, who are part of the Eora Nation, which is the North Shore of Sydney. I want to pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging, as well as my respects to all of your traditions and all of the stories on the land that you are joining us from this morning. I'm going to share my screen with you now and just share a few ideas about online community building and how to know when you're launch ready, how to know when you're ready to launch, to commit to sharing your story and trying to build that community. I'm going to share a couple of little models that we use at Start Some Good in different parts of our ecosystem. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Start Some Good. We're a global catalyst for social innovation projects. We do that in a few different ways, looking at how we can inspire people to step up and take action around social change and find their purpose, helping people design impact projects that could work and helping them get those projects launch ready, and then helping people actually launch and grow those projects. So a big part of our Inspire work is events and speaking, and our annual Starting Good Virtual Summit, which this year had 6,000 participants, and you can find out more about that at starting.gd. We do a lot of the design work through our Good Hustle program. You can find out more about that at goodhustle.online. That's a 10-week program to help you design a launch or growth-ready social enterprise. And I'll be giving you some hints of what we teach in that program here this morning. And then we help people launch through our crowdfunding platform, as Anna mentioned, at startsomegood.com. So how do we build communities online? Obviously, the internet is an incredible opportunity for us to connect to each other across geographic distance. But as we all know, that's easier said than done, because the world is very busy and the online world is busy as any other. And so everyone's rushing around. Everyone's overwhelmed by the amount of information out there, the sources of information, trying to figure out what's credible, trying to figure out what's real. And so how do we cut through all that noise and all those people competing for attention? Well, I think one of the key ways we do that is that we actually share a story that's worth paying attention to. And this is really the foundational principle, of course, of all social enterprises or all social impact projects, is that they have a story literally worth sharing, because it's a story about what really matters in the world. It's a story about their community, our world, and the future that we're going to inhabit together. And so what we know, in the social world today and the new communications ecosystems that we live in, is that the content that gets shared is that is timely, memorable, and trustworthy. And by having a story that matters, by talking about something that's bigger than you, that's not just about profit, and it's not just about product either, it's about purpose. It can help your story become more timely, because it's about the real world, it's about things that matter now, it's about how we get to where we want to go, that are more memorable because they tell a story about something that is intrinsically interesting, about people and purpose and impact, and trustworthy, because it seems like you're in it for the right reasons, that you're really there, if done well, that you're in it for the right reasons and you're really there to make a difference. And you know, it's been interesting to watch which companies are stepping up into the current moment when there is such an important conversation going on right now, right across the world, about race relations and white supremacy, and which companies are comfortable in their own skin and willing to speak out and take a stand around that. And one of those companies has certainly been Ben & Jerry's, who are one of the very early and very prominent social enterprises that has always worn their values on their skin. You'll even see in the top navigation of their website, flavors, shop and catering, values. It stands right there at the top. And that's because they've always believed that business is a lever to change the world. They weren't just making ice cream because they were into ice cream. Even from the very beginning, they were in business in order to make a difference. As Ben Cohen, one of the founders, the Ben in Ben & Jerry's, said, business is the most powerful force in our society. The only way that we're ever going to deal with the problems that are confronting us is for business to get involved. And we continue to see that ethos in Ben & Jerry's today. And that's the ethos that fuels the entire social enterprise sector. The reason that myself and so many others are in business is not because we're trying to make, enormous wealth for ourselves. It's because we genuinely want to make an impact on the world, and we see business as an amazing tool to do that. Business is a collection of tool sets that enable us to catalyze innovation, bring people together, and solve problems. And an increasing number of social entrepreneurs all around the world are picking up these tools and using them in a really purposeful, focused way to make a difference. And they're seeing communities very naturally build around them who want to be part of that story, who want to be part of that journey, who want to be part of making that impact. And so how social enterprises to step up and how they make a difference, of course, varies, is as diverse as the social enterprises themselves. They might be redistributing products via a buy one, give one type model that Tom's Shoes popularized, and Hero Condoms in Australia is another example of. They might be generating profits that are distributed to good causes like Great Barrier Beer, and all the beers produced by the Good Beer Company, all of which are about raising funds for important causes in Australia. I'm just going to close the door. Or they could be Street, who leverage their cafe and coffee roasting businesses to create employment opportunities for young people otherwise at risk of homelessness. Or it could be Speech for Good, which puts the power of speech therapy in the pocket, in your pocket, providing people, low-income people with, particularly who have a stutter, an opportunity to receive high-quality speech therapy to overcome that stutter. It could be helping people figure out which other ethical products they can find and buy, like Good on You, which puts trusted ethical ratings in the palm of your hand so you can find fashion without harm. It could be making fashion in new ways or clothes in new ways, like Ocean's End Bikinis, who make all of their swimwear out of plastics recovered from the oceans in order to improve the environment or reduce the environmental impact of clothing and manufacturing. It could be someone like Words with Heart, who are doing a number of different positive things, creating a completely recyclable, low environmental impact product, raising funds to support women and girls' education, as well as using the power of words to inspire people to change the world. Or Substation 33, an electronic waste recycling facility which creates jobs for intellectually and physically disabled people or people with different needs, as well as, of course, capturing a waste product and turning it into something valuable, reducing the environmental impacts, and raising funds for their parent nonprofit. What we know in aggregate, though, is that the social enterprise sector is growing rapidly, that something is really resonating with people at the moment. The most recent Finding Australia's Social Enterprise Sector report estimated that there was a 37% increase in social enterprises in the last 5 years. I think that might even be an undercount, because social enterprises are, in fact, hard to count because they're scattered across all different business types. Social enterprises are not a type of business; they're a way of doing business. And so there are social enterprises that are not-for-profits, that are for-profits, that are cooperatives, that are community associations. But what we do know is that they're growing quickly. Why is that? Well, a big part of why is that we know that our values are shifting around our expectations of brands, that particularly millennials and Gen Z are demanding a higher standard from the people that they choose to work for or the people they choose to buy from. But it's also that the way we're talking with each other and sharing our values has shifted. That we've moved from a world that was all about interruption, where people with big bank balances would pay to interrupt people. You know, you're watching the football on television and someone pays to interrupt with a commercial message. You're hoping for a personal postcard and someone pays to interrupt that with some junk mail. You're trying to go shopping and someone pays to interrupt that with a donation request from someone dressed in a koala costume. These are all forms of interruption. And interruption always favors the status quo because it's expensive. But we've shifted from that, from a world that is less about interruption and more about sharing. And this favors the purposeful because it favors people not just who have the money to interrupt you with their message, but have a message that is inspiring enough that people want to share it for them. And so social enterprises are often growing not because they have a big bank balance or they're spending a lot on marketing, but because they are inspiring people to want to be part of that community, inspiring people to see in their product and in their business an opportunity to live out their values and create the difference that they want, and who are then inspired to share that with others and expand that community. And that's what can make interesting things that are not intrinsically interesting. And this example maybe is a little less current now than it was. I need to come up with a new example, but I'd often talk a lot about toilet paper and how no one ever takes photos of their toilet paper and shares on social media. Now, of course, that all changed during the pandemic and everyone was sharing photos of their toilet paper or empty shelves where toilet paper should have been. But if you could think back 5 months ago, before that, it was highly uncommon for people to feel inspired to share photos of toilet paper, unless they were people who buy from Who Gives a Crap toilet paper. Those guys love sharing photos of their toilet paper. Why is that? Because it says more. It doesn't just say, check me out, I bought toilet paper. It says, I care about other people. I'm an ethical consumer. I have progressive values. I'm a good person. There is literally more content in this content than there would be for other toilet paper brands, because Who Gives a Crap story is about more than toilet paper. It's about how you can make a difference through your everyday consumption. And that's true for other social enterprises as well. And so just as Ben said, business itself is a lever to make a difference. Making a difference is a lever to build a better business. Having a purpose allows you to get more from the resources we've got. It's like adding, some extra nitro fuel in the tank. It'll make your story go further, more effectively, being shared peer-to-peer by people who share your passion and share your interest in making a difference. It'll help you recruit great people who want to use their talents to make a difference. It'll help those people stick around and work harder and more purposefully and more innovatively to make a difference. It'll set you up for success in business, just as your successful business will set up an impact in the world that you want to see. And so at Good Hustle, we teach people a 5-step pathway to ultimately making a difference through the journey as a social entrepreneur that we call impact, just to be nice and memorable. And I want to share it with you as just some really important pieces of the puzzle that you need to think about how you're going to build and how you're going to put in place if you want to go on this journey as a social entrepreneur. The first is, of course, you need a compelling impact model. So in Good Hustle, we spend 2 weeks on each of these, a 2-week module through our 10-week course, and we start with impact. And I think that's really important. Often social enterprise courses can start with the business model. They say, make sure you have a business first, and then figure out how you can do good with that business. But that almost always leaves you doing good in a relatively shallow way, by making small donations, by doing buy one, give one, by kind of doing this plug-on stuff. Not by thinking about how the business itself, at the very heart of the business, can be built around making a difference long term. And so we start with impact because we think the harder piece. Business is hard but simple at the same time, but social change is really complicated. And so you need to really understand the issue that you're working on. You really need to understand your theory of change. And of course, you need to have a compelling model that people are excited about. So we start with impact model. Let me say, okay, now you have clarity into what the world needs, what the community needs, what the environment needs, what the future needs. How do we build a business model around that? And then how do we test that, of course? And so ultimately, in social enterprise, it's not enough to just have a theory of change around how to change the world. You also need to be able to fuel that impact through a business model. And by doing this order, we try and get the impact embedded in the business model, or rather the business model wrapped around the impact, but the two of them intrinsically linked. So it could be through employment, it could be through innovative products that are more sustainable, It could be through building circular economies like oceans and bikinis, capturing a waste product and turning it into a valuable asset. It could be through philanthropy, but having clarity on that next is really important. Then you need to find your people. Who is it for? Both who is the product for, but who is the cause for? As a social enterprise, people can get excited about you for two distinct reasons, although it's great when they overlap. The first is excitement about your product. I need that. And the other is excitement about your impact. The world needs that. They're not always the same group of people. Sometimes you're making a product. Your product might be, I don't know, low-cost solar for people in low-income communities in India. But your impact community might be a bunch of people in Australia who really care about development issues and poverty and achieving the sustainable development goals, and who are excited to help you fuel that impact. So sometimes those are two different communities. But you need to, of course, have clarity on who is the product for and why, who cares about the impact and why. And then you need to communicate your value. And oftentimes that means mapping the way to get your story to the right people. You might know who it's for, but do you know how to get your story in front of them? Have you got a pitch? Do you have different pitches, in fact, for different situations that highlight different hooks or different attributes of your work in order to get different groups of people excited? Have you thought about how to leverage social technologies, how to use video, how to use some of the emerging communications tools that are out there to best communicate what you're doing? And finally, the road is long, so you need to be tenacious. Things are not going to go the way you want. You're going to have setbacks. It's going to take longer than you thought. In like 99.9% of social entrepreneurs I've ever met, things were taking longer than they had thought when they first set out. That's always been true for me. Because as people, to be a social entrepreneur is to be pretty optimistic. It's to really believe that change is possible, to believe that you have the capability of creating change, and to commit yourself to that journey is an act of enormous optimism and hope. And so this impact model, as you think about these core components in the right order, how are you going to make an impact? How are you going to fund that impact? Who that impact is for, or who could be your allies and partners on that journey? How are you going to find and communicate to those people in a way that will inspire them? And how you're going to maintain your own energy and your own sustainability through what is likely to be a long journey if you're really committed to that impact. And so a big part of what we spend those last 2 weeks on in Good Hustle is personal self-care routines, designing a personal sustainability approach that will work for you. So as I said, this is the methodology that underpins our Good Hustle social enterprise design program. And I can't resist mentioning that the enrollment deadline for the next cohort is next week on Tuesday, June 23. So please check that out if that's at all interesting to you. We help people build a realistic plan to get launch ready, or those who have already launched to fix some of the pieces in their business that are not working so they can get growth ready. And doing that in a peer-led environment where we're not just learning from experienced social entrepreneurs, but learning from each other as well who are on the journey with us. And then the other promise takeaway was, how do you know when you're actually launch ready? And we have a lot of experience in that at our Start Some Good website, because for the last 10 years, we've been helping people launch. And we've actually achieved the highest project success rate in cause crowdfunding. And it's because we really help people think about whether they are in fact launch ready and what pieces they need to put together to get launch ready. And this is where we've come up with the 5 C's of successful crowdfunding. But this is still relevant even if you're not planning to crowdfund. You could think of this as the 5 C's of successfully launching. And there's kind of 3 bundles of C's. So the C's are clarity, credibility, communities, channels, and courage. Clarity and credibility are the core attributes of the story you're telling. Is it clear? Do I get it? Do I understand the value proposition? Can I recognize that it's for me? Do I know what the product does? Do I know the impact it creates? Are you expressing that to me in a way that is simple, that allows me to intuitively grasp it and to visualize the kind of world that you're trying to create? But then credibility is so important, because while clarity allows me to understand what you're doing, credibility is what allows me to believe that you're capable of doing it. So how are you signaling your credibility? That could be through your personal background and track record. It could be through the progress the project has made so far through MVPs or pilots so that it's now ready for this next step. It could be through the partners you've brought in, the promises you make, or even your past performance in your organization. So people, partners, promises, the past, and progress are our 5 P's of credibility that we teach that we teach people going through our coaching programs at Start Some Good. Then communities, and what that really means is carefully chosen communities, getting really clear on who you're trying to reach for your campaign. And that might be a few different communities who will respond to a few different hooks. A hook is the piece of your campaign or enterprise that you highlight for a particular audience. So you might, if I'm doing a social enterprise food truck employing homeless people, depending on the audience, I might focus on how cool are food trucks versus how important is it to create jobs for homeless people, depending on whether I'm talking to, the audience I'm talking to. So those are examples of two different hooks. It's the exact same project, but it highlights a different part of that project in order to try and really inspire or connect with a particular audience. So carefully chosen communities is deciding what hooks do you want to deploy and who are they for, getting really intentional about the community that you're building. And then channels is how you reach that community. So those, communities and channels are kind of the two halves of a proper outreach plan. Communities is the strategy, thinking really carefully about who you want to reach, and then channels is the tactics. How are you going to reach them? What particular set of channels, techniques will work for the particular audience? It could be by going around and trying to speak in person to as many Rotary clubs or meetup groups as possible. It could be using video or Instagram stories. It could be specific communities for specific areas of interest that you'll find online, on Medium or forums or other types of communities. It's about finding the right set of channels to meet the right people that you have identified as your likely community. And finally, you need courage to get out there and do the work, to stand in front of people and share your dreams, to take that risk of public failure, but without which you can't achieve public success. And if we're talking about building online communities, public success is the only kind of success there is, because we're trying to expand our public. We're trying to build a bigger community. We're trying to invite people in. So for long-term success, think impact. And for launch success, think the 5 C's. And when you succeed, this is what it looks like. It looks like a group of people who feel transformed through your enterprise, who feel like whatever it is that you're created is a vehicle for them to also live their values and make a difference, and where they share that sense of ownership of being part of something. We got this amazing email from a supporter of a social enterprising gospel called the Gospel Rhythm Hub, and it said that the campaign was transformative. Our community came together in a way that raised our sense of ownership to a new level. That's the kind of online community building we're talking about. That's what social capital looks like. It's when people feel like they're a part owner in whatever it is you're doing, not in a literal sense, but in a more important philosophical and emotional sense, that this is something I care about and that I can contribute to, and I'm on this journey too. And so I wish you luck with all your community building and social change endeavors. And I'd be very happy to answer a couple of questions now if you want to stick around.
Thank you so much, Tom, for sharing such really structured models around how people can start engaging with this. So we've got how do you work with entrepreneurs, so people that are in organizations? And I know you've got some really successful programs in place for the Good Hustle, which I might speak to you about in a minute if you want to stay online. Sure. What about those people that are in organizations and they're really, really committed to creating change and wanting to use their skill set in a way where, they can start some good? Mm-hmm. What would be your advice to those individuals, Tom?
What we really focus on is, I guess, how we get ideas out of people's heads and into the real world in the context of something that is public facing, that is building community, that is either a product or a campaign or a movement for change. But we also do a lot of work with companies who are not themselves launching, who are not themselves, startup social enterprises, but who are passionate about partnering with community-led impact projects. And I think for a lot of existing organizations, that's the right approach to take. And it's an approach an entrepreneur can really lead. And part of that approach is knowing that you don't need to come up with all the answers yourself. Is this kind of open innovation mindset that says, as an organization with resources that wants to make a difference, we don't just need to kind of sit inside our little lab, inside our bubble, and figure out what the community needs on our own. How do we partner with that community? How do we inspire that community? How do we leverage our resources to support that community to make a difference? And so that, our partnership programs have a number of different forms. Sometimes they're scholarship programs that leverage something like Good Hustle, but where someone like we did a course earlier this year called Good Hustle for Our Climate, and it was sponsored by Future Super and Huddle Insurance, 2 B Corps with a strong environmental focus. And so they together funded a number of scholarship places for people working on zero carbon businesses to remove that financial barrier. Now, we of course have to charge for these places because we're trying to be a sustainable social enterprise as well. We like any other enterprise offer a product that we believe creates a lot of value and resource ourselves from doing that. But through that kind of partnership model, they're able to support those grassroots innovators, or a program like Dreamstarter that we run for ING, which helps early stage social enterprises launch. What's great about those kind of programs is they make a really big difference because they kind of support people at everything we do is kind of about supporting people at an early stage to try out new things and to launch, innovative ideas for change. But companies who support people at that grassroots level often receive enormous kind of social kudos themselves, and it has a really powerful brand building benefit because it's more trustworthy. It kind of goes back to what I said right at the start. In sharing those stories, in backing those grassroots innovators, they themselves are able to tell a story that is more timely, more memorable, more meaningful than just their own commercial messages.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. And do we have any final questions for Tom today? Because I know we're running out of time a little bit. Or any thoughts, any feedback? Any noise? Any noise in the audience? Yeah, but also that, it's really valuable today, and we will be sharing this. So anyone who didn't manage to get access to this, we're actually going to put it online. It's the last boost today. Give me an
end of an era.
Over 40 inspirational speakers like Tom donate their time over this period. And it's all been free of charge to help leaders and help business owners and help people just keep it together and learn something new each day and be inspired. So thank you so much for your time today, Tom. I'm really looking forward to spending a bit more time with you in the future. And if you have really enjoyed this, we've got the Game Changers Gathering coming up on the 15th of August, which will be a day where we're actually going to get together, and we're capping it at 100 people to make sure we can stay COVID safe. But also do tune in and look at the Good Hustle and get your applications in before the Tuesday, so that you can, go on and make the world a better place. Thank you for your time today, everybody, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks.